Alright, woodworkers. So I've laid out my mortise for my joinery, and instead of chopping this out with chisels, with other mortising machines or tools, the drill press makes the most sense. And so I'm here, I'm going to set this up. I am going to use a brad point bit, which I prefer for this operation, and I've selected a diameter that is slightly smaller than the size of the mortise that I'm going to be drilling out. So once I've got that, I'm going to mount this bit into the chuck of the drill press. I'll need the chuck key for tightening all this down. And I've gotten into the habit of tightening each of these three positions to make sure that it really is engaged. I don't think that it's a major issue for just tightening down the one, but old habits die hard, they say. Okay. Next thing I'm looking at is the distance between the end of the drill bit and the surface of the material. So if I were to leave it here, I'm going to have to continue to push this crank until I get into this awkward position here. And it's just less efficient to waste all of this space on cranking this thing down and then going further through the material. So what I would prefer to do is raise up the bed of the drill press until I'm close to the surface, maybe an eighth of an inch away from that now. There's still a lot of movement here laterally with this bed, so on the other side of this collar I'm going to tighten this down so that I have less movement in this position here. The last thing that I want to do is I've got a makeshift fence here which is perfect for the operation we're doing. As long as I've got this set up to a fixed position, then I can clamp down the other end. And you'll notice that this is really not a fancy fence at all, but it is useful for what we're doing. The fence doesn't need to be parallel or perpendicular to the edges of the bed. All we're trying to reference is the distance from the outside edge of the bit to where the fence edge begins. And so then I'm set. This drill press has a quill lock, which I'm really fond of because I can lock this thing down, as you saw, pull the fence into position, and then I'm ready to start drilling. Alright, releasing that lock, now I am ready to start drilling into place. When I'm drilling a long surface like this, I always want to start on one edge and then go all the way over to the other edge of my joint, drill those out first, and then clear out the middle. If I start working on one edge and then work my way down, I'm always going to end up with a bigger chunk, or forcing me to get too close to where the other edge is here, and I don't want to do that. So getting the perimeter set first and then clearing out the center, I feel is just much more efficient. And then before I do anything else, I want to rotate this bit so I can sight down where this bit is going to start. And that looks good. I don't want to make contact with any of my layout lines. If I do, that bit is always going to start to find a way outside of those lines, and that work is going to be left for the chisel. So I just want to get out most of the material and go from there. So here we go. When I'm drilling, I drill down and then I pull back up to release all those chips off of the bit. And then the other thing about drilling is I want to be really careful about how that drill bit leaves the work. And this is a good example, if you can see it, of what to watch for. So I got a lot of tear out here, and if you remember, my rule is always wherever the tool leaves the work, that's where tear out's going to happen. So there's an easy way to avoid this, and I got lucky with this one. Let me see if I can't show you a better way to do it to avoid tear out altogether. I want to clear off Any chips here, if those are underneath the board, then this board can start becoming very unstable as I'm drilling. Not really a safety concern, it's just an annoyance more than anything. Okay, so lining up this edge of the bit now. I don't have to worry about the opposite edges, just because the fence is in place. I'm always going to find my way in the center of this mortise. Alright. So still clearing chips, still doing all the stuff I talked about, but this is the way I pull this machine, or the work away from the machine. If I flip this over, keep the same edge against the fence, I can come in from the other face. And now, any material that would otherwise be torn out, where the tool leaves the work, it's going to happen in the center of this board, and so there's no tear out anywhere. And this, for this board, is pretty convenient because there's really not much to what we're doing as far as process here. Sometimes I don't have the luxury of flipping this over, but since I do, I'm going to take full advantage of it. Okay, so I want to overlap these holes just a little bit. So when I'm doing the next drill, it's going to or the next hole, it's going to overlap a little bit with that first hole. The thing about brad point bits and Forstner bits are that the center of that bit has got to be engaged in wood the entire time. If I try to inch this over so that that center could find its way into the first hole, then you're going to have a really uneven hole that starts getting kind of jerking around. So by doing this, I should be able to clear out most of the material and then save the rest of it for handwork. Okay, so this is what I have as far as the mortise, and you can see I still have lots of material around the perimeter here that's easy enough to clean up with a chisel. I'm not going to go any bigger with my drill bit size to compromise any of those lines, and I got lucky I don't have any tear out in places that matter. Alright, next step, back to the bench with the chisel.